Great Britain has 2,593 railway stations, and each of them is sorted out by different codes to distinguish each other. One of these codes is a three-letter code that have one or two of the same letters as the station name, like KGX for King's Cross, EPS for Epsom, KMH for Kempston Hardwick, and so on. But if you go onto chorus.org.uk and over to the National Railway Station branch, you'll come across another code known as the National Location Code. This is a four-digit number allocated to every station and ticket issuing area in the country. But if you look closely on the website, you will notice some stations with no NLC, but are still counted as a BR station for some reason, which include bus stops, piers, and stations in other European countries. So I wanted to discuss about probably the most prestigious transport hub mentioned on the website, and is a place which you might not expect, the French capital of Paris. Now, we all know Paris is a big center for the arts, fashion, and culture, and home to famous world landmarks all interconnected by the Paris metro. But only 20 miles to the east of Paris lies the Marne-La-Vallee, and in it lies a resort with its own train station built in the 1990s, Disneyland Paris, and its station, Marne-La-Vallee Chessy. The story of Chessy having a BR code has to do with the fact that Eurostar used to serve the resort. Technically it does under the merger with Thales, but the services from the UK have been axed. Let's talk about it. The story of this forgotten route starts all the way back in July 1955, when Disneyland opened in Anaheim, California. After the success of it in the 60s, the conception of a European theme park similar to Disneyland were incentivized. 4 cities in Europe were considered, which included London, Paris, Frankfurt, and Milan. This was later brought up again in the 1980s, and it presents a list of 1,200 possible locations. Germany was dropped in favor of Spain, with Britain, France, and Italy remaining on board. But Britain and Italy were eliminated due to both countries lacking suitable flat land. Spain was the most likely option due to having a similar climate to both Florida and California. The site chosen in Spain was near the city of Alicante, in the town of Pego, but this would have involved the destruction of the Marshal de Pego Oliva marshlands, so it was quickly shelved. But finally, Marne-La-Vallee was chosen because of its central location in Western Europe, coupled with a suitable temperate climate. CEO Michael Eisner signed the agreement with the French government, but failed to consult French citizens about it, and this was when controversy started to surge. The French Communist Party feared that this would be a shock of cultural imperialism, with one even describing the concept as a cultural Chernobyl. English was required to be spoken at all meetings by Disney's American managers, and there would be a strict dress code which limited the use of facial hair, jewelry, etc. French labor unions saw this as an individual liberty attack, while others sued Disney, claiming that they were being insensitive to French culture as restrictions on individual or collective liberties were illegal under French law. These controversies raged on until April 12, 1992, when the resort opened. And it bombed. Before we get towards the Eurostar segment of the video, let's talk about the opening. The opening of the resort coincided with the opening of a train station of its very own, served by an extension of Area A east from Torcy, providing a 40 minutes journey to and from Paris, and a high-speed TGV station on their own line bypassing Paris. Now, the resort's opening was nothing short of disastrous. First off, people were warned to avoid the roads near Euro Disney, which would mean they had forecasted about 90,000 cars to enter the gates, but in reality, only about 25,000 showed up. Not only that, but it was coupled with a day's strike on Area A, making the park inaccessible. This was made only worse as the opening was during the European recession, and the fact an earthquake rattled Germany. The park was under threat of bankruptcy and underperformance due to the lack of recreation and overabundance of hotels. Even 25% of the workforce, or about 3,000 people of the 12,000 people who worked at the park, had to resign due to alleged poor working conditions. All of this, coupled with earlier controversies, meant that the Walt Disney Company's finances started to decline, and led to cancellations of several expansions to other Disney resorts. As a last resort, Disney threatened to close the park permanently, which would leave the resort back to the leasing company owned by the banks. Eventually, things began to turn around in late 1994, with the name change to Disneyland Paris, and in 1995, with the resort receiving its first quarterly profit. Tourism at the resort began to increase, and with this incline, a new rail service would be established. This coincided with the Channel Tunnel opening between Folkestone and Calais. Eurostar started commencing operations between London Waterloo and Paris and Brussels. The cross-country operator began running a service to the resort in 1996. This would operate year-round with E300 units, departing St Pancras in the morning and arriving back in the evening. The service would run as normal along HS1 through the Channel Tunnel and LGV Nord, which included a stop at Lille, Europe. But as it reaches its destination, it turns left at this Y-link and passes under CDG Airport before running along the LGV interconnection line to terminate at the resort train station. This service was extended down to the French Alps as a seasonal service in the winter. A seasonal service in the summer was also added to the French Riviera, but this was cut in 2014. With a service from the UK, the station gained unofficial recognition on their BR station code list as MCK, tied with Gare du Nord. During the 2010s, the service was received quite positively, with tourists from the UK finding an easy way to get to the resort. The station featured Eurostar check-in and border controls, operated by the French Border Police on the second floor of the building. The UK Border Force used to operate contrasting control and pre-embarkation immigration checks, but the UK discontinued this. To counteract this change, the UK immigration was done at St Pancras. As complicated as this was, things would quickly change for the service. In 2019, Brexit happened, which meant Britain would leave the EU, changing the passport requirements for entering and leaving the EU Schengen area. Just a short time later, the global pandemic happened, putting a stop on all tourism, and so the resort temporarily closed as new social distancing measures were put in place. Because of this, the popularity on the service declined, and eventually in 2023, the service to Disneyland Paris shut down. This was part of a plan for the operator to focus on its core routes while saving money. But with the recent merger with Thales, it is possible to return the service at a later date. But for now, the only way to go from London to the resort is by changing services at Lille.